Okay, we are here to talk about Penelope, season one on Netflix, specifically focusing on the last half of the season, episodes five, six, seven, and eight. And the show was created and written by Mark Duplass, Mel Eslin, and each episode was directed by Mel Eslin. After the events with Helena in episode four, Penelope spends several more weeks in the woods, learning how to survive on her own, learning how to build shelter, catch and cook food, and stay warm. While in the woods, she runs into a trio of disenfranchised Catholic teens looking to find more meaning in their lives after graduating high school and devoting much of their childhood to their faith. Penelope ends up falling for one of them, Peter. After spending a night with him, she burns the letter that he leaves her with his contact information. Winter eventually arrives, bringing a new set of challenges, including a cougar that attacks Penelope and injures her. These injuries force her to make a long journey into town, where she collapses but is discovered and taken to a hospital. Social worker there at the hospital tries to get the truth out of Penelope of who she is, but she decides to keep her identity hidden and go back out on her own. But while spending the night in the town, she decides to log on to the library's computer, where she sees first overwhelming messages of support and people searching for her, but also messages that show that her parents have somehow died while she was in the woods.
Mhm.
Um, we asked the question last week, who is this show for? I've decided, even though I enjoy it, this show is not for me, and I have various reasons for that. General thoughts on this second half of the season from the perspective of what we had from the first half.
I quite enjoyed it, so I don't know if we're on that question of who's it for. The way you phrased the question last week was kind of related to age,
Hmm.
like is this for teens or is this for adults? Um, so I'm curious why you landed on this thought that it's not really for you. Since you mentioned it,
Yeah.
let's just start there. Let's interrogate that, I guess.
I think that in this second half of the season, again, just cannot shake the perspective of watching this as a parent. And I found myself constantly removed from the story because of how much of the imagination you have to stretch to think that there would not have been a full out missing persons Amber Alert search for this girl, that teenagers that ran across her either would not recognize her or would not come back into society and realize, oh my goodness, that's the girl we just saw in the woods. That a social worker would not realize that this is a missing person, would not press her to find out who she is, instead just leave her to go out on her own. And I just found myself completely, again, I very much enjoyed the aspect of following her journey in the woods, but I just kept finding myself thinking the reality of this is this just couldn't happen the way that they're laying it out here.
Yeah, I mean, I did wonder about that, and at the end of the day, mostly it's one of those things where the show asks you to accept what happens within it. And I can understand you saying that you struggle to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I was more able to do that than you were, or just accept it. I don't know on the question of the plausibility. I did find myself thinking, I don't know in a certain way. I mean, one, I think you're right that there would have been a massive effort to find her.
Yeah.
But I think, maybe there was, like we're never given the any perspective other than her perspective, really,
Yeah.
to know. And we get some at the end when she logs on to not Facebook or whatever. I think they made up their own social media thing, I
Right.
believe. Um, and of course you see people there like, oh my, it's been months, or,
Yeah.
um, so searching for her but could not find her. Yeah, I mean, thinking about the plausibility, I think there is some insofar as, unfortunately, the powers that be in the world, the authorities, the police, and such, would probably give up after a certain period of time,
After a period of time, yeah.
you know, or not entirely give up. Like it's an open case, but sorry, we don't have any leads on where your daughter is.
Right.
If we get a lead, we'll let you know, or something like that.
And that leads to the question of, do we know how long she was gone? It's months. It has to be months,
Has to
right?
be months.
Yeah.
But clearly less than a year.
Yeah.
I would say, somewhere in that space of 4 to 6 months. I don't
Yeah.
know, because I think one of my gauging it on. It seems to maybe be summer when we start. I don't know, and then it's
Yeah, I was thinking
winter.
like end of summer, school starting. She has to go back and do some SAT prep. We learned that in the first episode. So yeah, maybe sort of end of summer.
Yeah, or her sister did. I think she has a sister. I
Yeah,
meant to go
yeah.
back and
Oh
double
yeah,
check the meeting. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think we're around that period, maybe only, maybe quote unquote, only 3 months.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if we're focusing on the plausibility, which to be clear to people listening, I'm not sure that you should,
Yeah.
right?
I,
Like,
I I hear that. I hear that.
but I understand Ryan's resistance here. Just kind of trying to think it through. You could well see how, after a period of time, the authorities have more or less given up in a de facto way.
Yeah.
Her parents died at some point. We don't know exactly when. We don't know exactly how.
Yeah.
That
I mean, yeah, just sudden and shocking to see that news at the end. Maybe that's what sort of threw this whole thing maybe out of alignment for me. And I don't, as I'm thinking about this story, I really enjoyed the part with the teenagers, specifically that relationship that's forged there. I don't put sort of outside the realm of possibility that they have anything to do with this missing person, any of that. I think it was just more of a, oh, because I thought I could see the trail here of she's going to go into town. She's going to have to end up at a hospital. They're going to discover who she is. She's going to be reunited with her family. Her family's going to ask what's going on, why, and then she's going to either realize that, she's had these moments of discovery or not, and decide, oh, I want to go back to that life. But then we're just sort of, again, neither the social worker nor the hospital is really making much of an effort to get her identified. And then this news at the very end of, oh my gosh, her parents have died while she was out there. And I think that's trying to tell us something when we talk about what that is. But yeah, just sort of, I think it deviated from the path it was going. And maybe that's what's throwing me off.
yeah, and well, I mean, that's where I mean it became clear to me. Oh, okay, there are ideas to take it beyond this one season
Yeah.
and starts kind of opening up thoughts about what that might look like. You
Yeah.
know, on the plausibility front, I was going to say more with the teens. I'll buy it, right?
Yeah.
Because what they're up to is similar enough to what she's up to, and the like and trust between them, or whatever. With the social worker, that's a question where I kind of don't know on a factual level,
Yeah.
but maybe it is plausible on a factual level in terms of what their policies look like. Because in the background, what we don't see but are told happened is that she consistently refused to tell the hospital who she was or provide contact information for anyone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the time we're seeing the social worker, she's already thoroughly expressed, I'm not going to tell you who I am or
Right.
anything like that, right? So, um, how does it work? How would it work at that point? I'm sure that this is. I don't think it's wildly implausible. Like I'm sure that they pulled
Yeah.
on some things about the real world in terms of um, crafting how this would go.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm also, we're left sort of befuddled as to how her parents died. And
mhm.
I'm left with sort of the worst case scenario thoughts of, well, they lost their child, so I don't know. There was one of them committed suicide, or they were distracted and got into an accident. Just something. It's related to her going missing, and I'm just struggling with this bomb that was dropped that I just was completely unexpected at the end.
Yeah, who knows? We don't know. We don't have enough
Right,
information.
right.
And people die suddenly. I definitely agree that it is quite. I didn't necessarily expect that the way the season was going to end was going to be so. I don't know what word I want. Dark, I guess.
Yeah,
Sad.
dark
Um,
and immediate. I mean, just that news and cut to black, right?
mhm.
Um, yeah, just quite staggering as to what you're left to think about when you find that out.
Yeah. But see, so I thought this was all quite good. I thought this was all quite effective. You know, I understand if you really struggle to get away from your perspective as a parent. You are a parent. I'm
Mhm.
not a parent. how much does that matter? I
Right.
mean, but I was feeling similarly as we started watching the show. We talked about this last week. I kept sitting there going, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Go back to civilization." Parents are freaking out. So I
Right.
get that. To at least to some degree, but um, it really got me thinking about throughout what is she doing and why is she doing what she's doing?
Yeah.
Because you kind of are left to ponder that, you know. Yeah, you have little things that she says and so on, but nothing that would feel like a kind of full explanation.
Yeah.
Even when she's now been hurt and she starts talking to herself that she can make it the 25 miles and
Yeah.
then she's going to come back.
Yeah.
Like she's intended to come back, even though it's winter, even though she's been attacked by a cougar and so on. But there's a moment in there where she is feeling quite bad about what she's done to others and feeling, I don't know, stupid or something. But then seems to kind of double down on this is her choice. Yet when she does finally get towards civilization, it's like she has a hallucination of her mother that she's running
Mhm.
to and she runs into a tree. So I don't know. There's questions about how we read all that. And any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, I found it interesting. As we discussed in the first half, there are some episodes of this show where there's very little to no dialogue whatsoever.
Mhm.
And those episodes are actually quite powerful. But interestingly enough, I found that sort of the juxtaposition of you want to learn more about why she's doing what she's doing, and yet there is no mechanism to do that unless she just talks out loud. So we don't really learn a lot about that, and it's in an environment where unless three teenagers come along, you almost can't figure those things out. We can't read her mind. We don't know exactly what it is that she's doing. We don't know exactly what's going to compel her, as she says, to want to go back to that, other than she's just she's so done with the world that she left behind, even to the fact that she just and I found myself thinking, well, she hesitated to log back on and get back on social media and check things, there at the library.
Mhm.
And it's almost like um, this thing that's trying to slap us in the face and saying, yeah, see, when you get back on, you get back to this world, this is what happens.
Well,
Um,
yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. Did you notice her profile picture? That was it very much stood out to me.
no, what did you notice?
Just she's like making a face. You have to go back and look at it. There's no way I can really
Yeah.
describe it, but it's like kind of, oh yeah, right. Your social media presence and how that differs from who you are outside of all of
Hmm.
that kind of performance. Because we've really we have gotten to know Penelope over the course of these 8 episodes. And I don't know, it was just striking to me. Just go back and look at it. She's just like
Yeah.
she's making a teen girl face. I don't know how to describe it.
Right.
It's like
I'm
if it's
familiar with
a
those, yes.
little snarky or whatever. I don't know. So that's just kind of the best I've got. That her motivation involves wanting to just get out of all of that, just be
Yes.
free from all of that. Um, and then kind of everything about the world that we live in and maybe not forever, but she doesn't know for how long. She doesn't quite know what she's after. She did
Yeah.
say something to Helena about wholeness, right? Or, will I ever feel whole or whatever. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
I find all this really kind of interesting to ponder. And then she does feel bad about what she's done with regard to her parents, but that doesn't win out really over.
Yeah. I just found that maybe I just thought there could have been a better way to show or tell us that, like, you get yourself back into this world, there are dangers by creeping back into it, even just a few steps, besides a story of, well, the thing I learned as soon as I get back into it is my parents have died, right?
Yeah, but that's
Maybe
yeah,
people
I
have,
mean, I guess that's not quite how I read that.
okay.
Like in terms of what the show is doing. Um, First, I did want to say that she does move in the direction of calling her parents, right? Like she
Yes.
tries to call her mom, I think.
I
I
think
think
that's
that's
what's
who's,
implied. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's whose voicemail hasn't been set up. I
Right.
think that's what occurs there. So then you can think, okay, well, yeah, she had all this resistance to the hospital, but maybe in part it was that she was thinking she didn't want her mom to be getting a call from the hospital, like, hey, we've got your daughter, and she's been in the
Yeah.
ICU and all of that. So she's slowly coming around to being willing to reach out to them, I think, and thus going to the library and getting on the internet is also kind of in line with that.
Hmm.
She's just kind of coming around to that. Finding out that her parents have died, I mean, you're right. It is kind of a shock. I mean, it comes right at the end of the episode, right at the end of the season. And where does that leave us? And what does that mean about where the story goes forward is a big question. But I didn't really read it as, oh, look, if you log on to Facebook, you're just going to find out bad things. I didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
quite think
Yeah.
that was the lesson of it. Um, I guess I need to say how I did read it.
Okay. Please do.
Um, so here's what it got me thinking about, right? As we've discussed, teenage girl just strikes out on her own to go live in the woods, leaving her parents a voice message saying, don't come looking for me, I'll be fine, or whatever. We've talked about that parent's perspective and how hard that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then the show is cutting off having to deal with a reunion between her and her parents. But I mean, it's foreclosing that possibility for her, which is also bad, right? Um, but then opens a question moving forward about that loss and about that structure of loss,
Hmm.
I think, where what I would expect would be for a hypothetical season two to really be structured around a question of grief and mourning.
Hmm. And to maybe make an attempt to extend what you're saying, grief and mourning and trying to do that in isolation like she has been for the past several months, can that be done? Or is it the right thing to do? Because she's saying she wants to go back, but can she grieve and mourn and be the person that she wants to be out there on her own when she now has this burden to deal with?
Right. I don't think so. And
Yeah.
this is what I found was really kind of interesting thinking about how the season ends is that the door's clearly open for a season two in a
Yep.
way where it almost wouldn't make sense if they don't continue the story. Um, and we've talked about how this was independently produced. They
Yeah.
could, in theory, make more of it, whether Netflix wants to or not. But I also saw, like, when I was watching the end of the season, this was in, like, the Netflix top 10.
Yeah. When I
So
thought it was seventh, I think. Yep.
we're doing well.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, that season one, I mean, you think, well, the whole show is about this girl going and living out in the woods.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what season two would be like,
I
right? I mean,
I don't think so. As much as we talked about this last week, I loved the episode, watching her for 22 minutes trying to learn how to make a fire,
yeah,
or watching her for 24 minutes trying to learn how to build a shelter and see her grow these skills and these instincts that she has. I mean, as much as I love that, yeah, it doesn't seem like we can just repeat the formula from season one and, introduce new ideas or traumas into that. There needs to be something else there as she deals with I guess, the ramifications of decisions and journeys that she took in season one.
yeah, I think something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think where it goes and the through line, as it were, will be more existential. So to think about why she was doing what she did in season one in those terms and kind of existential terms, or that attempt to reconnect with nature in a romanticist kind of way,
Yeah.
Maybe I should say romantic, but I mean like romanticism,
Mm-mm.
Capital R romantics, those guys. And that stuff about feeling broken and whole, the search for whole, that feeling of wholeness and so on. As I said last week, I think, well, you don't get that. And
Yeah.
so the story has to be about coming to terms with how you don't get that.
Yeah.
And now I'm tempted to read the discovery that her parents have died while she was missing and so on, as really bringing into view how it is that you don't get that. And you're going to have to figure out how to live anyway.
Yeah. Boy, that's a great point. I had not considered it that way, that she always had this sense of, well, if this doesn't work out, or if I don't find what I'm looking for, or if this journey doesn't take me where I thought it would or I want to go, there's always that, as you describe, that safety net I can go back to. Now there's not. And so what do I do? How's my journey different? Or how is me deciding to go back and do this again? How is it changing me knowing that, I mean, maybe she still has a sibling and whatever else, but
Mm-hmm.
to your point, if this is 6, 7 months later, are people even still looking for her and expecting her to show up again?
Well, and I mean, sure. We know that there are people who care about her out in the world. You
Yeah,
know, I think one of the comments we see on social media is referring to her as a niece, for example,
yeah, yeah.
and so on. But at the same time, she quite literally cannot go home again
Right,
because
right.
it's not there anymore, right?
Yeah,
Whatever happened to her parents?
and that's a remains a major question for me. It's almost like my, you know, mystery-minded brain wants to learn the reason why that happened, and why did they die, and what were the causes of that, and are they important or related to this? But I can't really see a way where, I mean, when she goes back and starts researching how that happened, that's we figure it out. As you said, she can't just go home and start asking these questions, and continue on the journey that she wants to go on. So that's seems to me where that second season would have to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious. I hope they do make more. I hope we get a second season. And I guess I have the faith that Mark Duplass and Mel Eslin have the ideas here. This is clearly not the whole story.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So then give me chapter two.
Yeah.
And I want to see it and I want to see where it goes personally. And with this,
I would be very, and for as much as I said, well, I don't think this show is meant for me, or is not something that is designed for my maybe my demographic to watch. I would certainly watch a second season to see what happens. Absolutely, I would.
oh yeah. No, I think I understood what you were saying. Hopefully
Yeah.
people listening did as well. But I don't know. Maybe talking it through shifted your feelings a little bit because I think part of what you were saying before is, you didn't expect it to end this way. You kind of expected the more standard kind of quote unquote happy ending,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
understand. I basically did too,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then having to deal with, well, now it's this fraught situation of as she reunites with her parents, the fact that she did this and all of that. So I thought it was kind of interesting that the show very precisely says, well, no, you're not getting that because their parents died.
Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
she's not getting that out.
There's not even an angst filled we don't resolve things reunion, which is like, okay, I could see that happening too, and it forces her to say, nope, I made the right decision back then. I'm going to go back and do it, and go on my own again.
Mhm.
And I would have thought, yeah, that makes complete sense. I would have not expected a just everybody hug each other, we're happy at the end of this, and we're all all just okay with everything. And I didn't expect that, and I certainly did not expect what we got.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm really curious for how this continues. Hope that it does continue. And I'm looking at our what I put in our notes, and maybe didn't quite hit everything, but I don't know if there's anything worth circling back to. Like I had this thought that how it was kind of interesting to me how meaningfully in each episode of the show, it's kind of like it's one thing.
Yeah, yeah, I did enjoy that. Yeah, like
Um,
I said,
I,
it was. I don't know that I've ever experienced this before. The most to me, impactful episodes were with zero dialogue.
Yeah.
I love those episodes.
Yeah, just like nothing.
Yeah,
Her in the woods, her figuring out how to
yeah,
do this or that. I was really startled by the cougar.
yeah,
And then the show did that to us
yeah.
almost, Like I recall in the earlier episode with the bear, thinking, well, this is the kind of show we're just going to get mauled by a bear,
Right, right,
you
right,
know. But it ultimately is the kind of show where she gets mauled by a cougar.
right. Now we need a fact check. Are there cougars in the Pacific Northwest woods? I'm sure there are.
Oh, I'm sure, I'm almost
Yeah.
positive about that. One of the things that's funny about that is by the time the cougar showed up, I had some part of me begun thinking, man, we're really not seeing as many animals as we should.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
where are all aren't there like squirrels or something,
Yeah.
or
We
whatever?
should have seen more bears by now. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. Just like because there's a few seconds there where it looks like she's like, yanked by her backpack and just pulled, back with
She
tremendous
is,
amount of
yeah.
force. I was like, what? I thought we were getting some kind of major twist, like a person kidnaps her or, something, but no, first turns out that it was animal wanting to tear her up.
Yeah, it might have, my experience might have been a little bit different because I have the subtitles on for some reason. There's like no dialogue, and I've got the subtitles on. But the subtitles say cougar,
That's funny.
cougar
Oh,
snarls or
yeah.
whatever,
And
yeah.
also just want to just shout out Renzi Feliz, who plays Peter. Renzi Feliz has a really significant sort of third lead role on the Penguin, and he is fantastic in that show. And he's in this, one episode of this show as well. So good for him. He's rising.
I wonder if he'll show up in season two. Because
Yeah,
if
could
she
be.
burns the node, which
Yeah,
I fully expected her to burn the node. This is the where the show did manage me to get in
yeah,
her, get me
definitely.
into her perspective um sufficiently, right? She reads the note. I'm like, well, she's going to throw that in the fire. And she did.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I thought it was kind of funny how she tries to do like a Google search by typing in like Peter religious guy.
Who
um,
who who among us have not done that yet?
right. I mean, this isn't going to work, but at the same time, what does she have to go on
Right,
and
right.
so on? The best I did, part of me feels like I may have told you about this before. One time I ran into Justin Long on the street.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was in New York. I was walking down to Lansing, and he was standing in front of a restaurant supply store that had like just closed. It was like 6 p.m. or something,
Yeah.
and asked me if I knew if there were any other restaurant supply stores around. And I did. And I was like, yeah, go down to Bowery and so on. But anyway, the thing was, I recognized him, but I couldn't remember his name. And I went home and successfully used Google to figure out who it was I just had this interaction with by typing in things like quirky indie actor guy, image search.
Yeah. You found him. Yeah,
I
that's
found him. I figured it out. So, but with Peter, he's not a famous person in this world. So
right.
I don't know. Did she never get his last
Catholic
name?
Catholic teens who like to hike. Yeah,
At least need his last
that'll be
name.
hard to find. Yeah,
So we'll see. So I've really enjoyed talking about this with you, Ryan. I've enjoyed
yeah,
watching it. I'm glad we
absolutely.
decided to do this. I mean, the show was on my radar as something I wanted to watch for sure, but I don't know if I would have got on it as quickly if we hadn't decided to do it on the podcast. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad we did.
Oh, so what's next for us, at least for the week to come?
Ah, yes, right. So we've decided for next week we're gonna go back to Apple TV Plus. We're gonna look at the premiere of Disclaimer, which we talked about briefly. Was that last week we talked about
Yeah, last
the
week.
show? Yeah. Um, so we're at least going to check out the premiere of that next week. If you want to join us for that, and then there's a decent chance that we will continue on with that week to week after next week, but we're not promising yet because we we haven't watched those two episodes yet, basically.
Yep.
So just leave the door open in case somehow after watching the two episodes we don't want to continue week to week. We're free to do that, but that's a basic plan, and That would take us up to Silo, I think,
Yes,
which so it works logistically anyway.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, join us next week. We'll talk about disclaimer. Thanks always for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review. If you're on YouTube, give a thumbs up, press that subscribe button. Really appreciate it. Follow TV Obsessive on social media. You search for TV Obsessive. You should find us on, the major platforms. Check out tvobsessive.com. You read about various shows. We've got some great in-depth articles and things like that. And we'll see you next week.
All right. See you then.